medieval blitzkrieg, Dunbar, Edinburgh, and then Stirling Castle all fell. The Scottish king was captured and then publicly humiliated by Edward. His royal badges of office stripped from him. As Edward marched back south, a chronicler caught his parting shot that a man does good business when he rids himself of a turd. The king brought a little souvenir back here to Westminster. It was the sacred stone of Scone, the stone on which, by tradition, all Scottish monarchs had been crowned. And to accommodate this piece of kingly plunder, he had this coronation chair constructed. And so another tradition was born. From 1308 onwards, all English monarchs would be crowned on this chair, with the sacred stone of Scone kept symbolically underfoot. But the Scots would not be tamed. A guerrilla campaign against the English began, this time led by a far more dynamic and charismatic leader, William Wallace, Braveheart. In the summer of 1297, Edward sent the Earl Warenne and Hugh Cressingham, his treasurer in Scotland, to deal with this new turd in the system. At Stirling, by the River Forth, the English fell into Wallace's trap. The English knights should have gone across here at low tide, where they could have forded the river 5 abreast. But things weren't going well that day. The Earl Warenne had woken up late, and Cressingham, the money man, so instead they went about a mile downstream and went across using a narrow wooden bridge. Wallace and his men were waiting high up on Abbey Crag as the English struggled 2 by 2 across Stirling Bridge. From this vantage point, Wallace could see the potential for an ambush. Down below at the river, as groups of Scottish commandos began to demolish the bridge, the English knights were forced onto a quagmire, leaving the rest of the English army stranded. Then Wallace gave the orders for an all-out attack. The English knights in their heavy armour were knocked to the ground, their throats cut. The rest of the army fled. The Battle of Stirling Bridge was over in an hour. Edward's revenge came the next year, exacted with his usual brutal efficiency. For the first time since he fought de Montfort as prince, Edward decided that he must be directly involved in the fighting. The Scots and English armies met again at Falkirk on the 22nd of July, 1298. Wallace, keen to prove himself in open warfare, deployed his men in a new defensive formation, the Schiltron, 4 rings of spears behind sharpened stakes. But Edward had a secret weapon of his own, the Welsh longbow, lethal over a range of 1/4 of a mile. This invention of a defeated enemy was now used decisively for one of the first times in medieval warfare. The longbowmen sent over a hail of arrows which decimated the Scots' lines. The English cavalry rode in to begin the slaughter. Up to 8,000 Scots lost their lives. Wallace escaped the carnage, but lost much of his reputation on the battlefield of Falkirk. With a price on his head, he was eventually betrayed by fellow Scots and put on trial by Edward in Westminster Hall. The king demanded a traitor's death. Wallace was taken to Smithfields and butchered. First he was hung, then he was decapitated, then he was drawn, his entrails were pulled out of him and burnt, and then he was cut into quarters. 3 parts of his body were distributed to Newcastle, Perth and to Berwick. The 4th and final piece of Wallace was reserved for display here at Stirling, the scene of his greatest triumph. Eight years after the Battle of Falkirk, Edward was still campaigning north of the border, this time dealing with yet another rebellious Scottish leader, Robert Bruce. What the king called this perverse nation had become an obsession. Certainly, he hadn't mellowed in his spiteful quest to be avenged. Back here at Berwick Castle, he had an open-air cage built in the shape of a crown to imprison the Countess of Buchan. Well, that was a nice touch, just to remind everyone that the Countess had recently played a part in crowning Robert Bruce, the King of Scotland. It was during yet another weary trek north that Edward, weakened by dysentery, died on the 7th of July, 1307. He was 68. There are many tales of the king's deathbed instructions. That his heart should go to the Holy Land with 80 knights. That his body should be boiled, so bones could be taken to Scotland to ensure ultimate victory for the English crown. In the end, Edward's body was buried, intact, close to Queen Eleanor in Westminster Abbey. And the tomb sums up the man. Big, solid, severe. There's no effigy on top. There was no money left to pay for one. The royal coffers had run dry after years of constant warfare. During the medieval period, candles were kept lit all around the tomb as a sign of respect for this awesome English monarch. And later still, an inscription was added. It reads, "Here lies Edward I, the hammer of the Scots." Or put that more politely, here lies the pioneer of a united kingdom.